When we think of the world of showbiz, I've often said here on this show, and I've been thrilled to be able to introduce to you some artists that you may have forgotten from yesteryear. Many of us, of course, remember them, but of course, it's just time, isn't it? They slip out the radar, that sort of stuff. But behind a lot of that has often been previously the British monarchy. This is because the association with the monarchy, in fact, can be very, very helpful, not just for keeping their star alive, but looking behind the scenes as to how the monarchy did a lot of good things that are not necessarily out there in print or indeed in the media. We find this out a lot about the monarchy. As I told you, with Queen Victoria, behind the scenes, she did her own investigations into the impoverished and the people that were living definitely under the radar. But that was a different time. There was no record of stuff like that, and she certainly didn't want that out in the public domain. This particular story I wanted to share with you because it just shows how caring a senior member of the British monarchy truly was. In very difficult times, and when you think about it, not in the liberal times that we have today, particularly with the flamboyant entertainers. Let me explain. Morning, lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Nice to have your company. Thank you as ever for taking the time out to join myself and all of these wonderful chums here on our channel. Do say hello to people. Don't be shy to get involved in conversations. And if you can, please like, share and respectfully comment. It's always nice to hear what you've got to say, obviously. Now, this particular man, Ivor Novello, it's hard to imagine, for 35 years literally ruled the roost of the West End. Way back in 1917 he had a mega hit with the very haunting Keep the Home Fires Burning, which of course became an anthem for the First World War. Though behind the scenes, Ivor Novello was definitely a very complex man, very clever man indeed as well, knew exactly how to operate the mechanics of the world of show business. Every day he would take lunch at certain points in the Savoy Grill, making sure that the people that mattered saw him, his rivals for instance, like Terence Rattigan and of course the likes of Sir Noel Coward. And that's the reason how he got to become so big in the early movies. Things like The Lodger, a very dark movie of its time, put together of course by the brilliant Alfred Hitchcock. But it was his musicals that really captivated a huge market. And for many years, alongside of course many great stars in his musical at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, well, he literally ruled the roost. He was, as I say, the Andrew Lloyd Webber of his era. And I think it's safe to say the reason why he's not as popular now is that while I like the songs, they do have a certain 1930s, 1940s about them. But, nonetheless, they're still as magical when you listen to them, and you can see what an expertise he was at composing and lyricist. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because literally by the time that he died, sadly, in the late 50s, he's sort of fallen out of favour. You've got to remember, we're on the cusp of the swinging 60s, that sort of stuff. And as you can imagine, while he was still popular, he wasn't as popular as he once had been. Struggling, he found new avenues, of course, and had many sort of resurgences in the popular musicals. He was still kind of working very hard, but he had some illnesses. And it was tragedy, of course, that really eventually saw him pass away at a very young age. Now, if you want to see exactly where Ivor Novello lived, it wasn't in anywhere shabby, let me tell you. It was in a flat above what was originally called the Strand Theatre, which is next door to the spectacular Waldorf Hotel just off the Aldwych in London. But behind the scenes, the Queen Mother was a dedicated fan, or Queen Elizabeth as she was then. Always went to his opening nights, and he was a frequent visitor inside royal palaces for luncheons that, well, he made her laugh with his wicked Welsh wit, as she pointed out. Now, it's her that we have to thank because, literally, as I say, there was a difficult thing for Ivor Novello. He was seen as flamboyant and not necessarily the right sort of person to be in vogue with at that point. When he passed away, the BBC were a little bit reluctant to actually broadcast his funeral. That is, of course, until the Queen Mother stepped in and said she couldn't necessarily get there herself, but how charming and, well, sweet it would be if she could tune into the wireless to hear the service and all those wonderful people that had gone out in their droves to line the streets to pay their very final respects to such a brilliant composer, entertainer and actor. And trust me, it was her word behind the scenes to the Director General that basically had Ivor Novello's funeral service broadcast across the nation. And that's what I was saying about what you don't know what the royal family can do. I'm not saying they wouldn't have done it, but that gentle persuasion, finally, from a senior royal made sure that Ivor got the send-off that many feel he fully deserved. If you've not listened to his music, do have a listen. It's captivating, melodic, and still, I believe, could have something of a revival even today. Either way, it's always nice to share these royal nuggets. Neil Sean on the back of a red London bus in the very heart of